Howdy y'all and welcome to week 3 of the It's About Us YouTube series. Richard, Zane, Mitch, Mason along with you, and we have a lot to cover this week, not only recapping kind of a sorry week 2, but actually looking forward to some decent games here in week 3.
Yeah, week 2 is kind of, like Mitch said, subpar, but it gave us some good moments. The whole Central Michigan over Oklahoma State thing was a big deal, and then Lamar Jackson ran wild again. The Aggies posted a shutout. Then, we get rewarded for, toughing it out last week, and we have a few really good games this week. The Aggies are just one of them. So we'll go ahead and get started with the recap, and I'll hand it over to my buddy Mitch.
Yeah, so we've got a couple games to look at, starting with the SEC. Alabama beat Western Kentucky 38-10. Alabama looked pretty good for the majority of that game. Nick Saban made news by yelling at Lane Kiffin afterwards, saying the offense was subpar, but 38-10 kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, 38-10. It wasn't close, and nobody really expected it to be close. But like Mitch said, got all over Lane Kiffin. Nick Saban wasn't happy with the play calling that eventually led to the touchdown, the only touchdown Alabama allowed all day. But other than that, nothing to complain about from the Crimson Tide.
No, I don't think so either.
They're number 1 for a reason.
Thank goodness Arkansas upset TCU, the Horned Frogs from down the road in Fort Worth. A double overtime shootout, 41-38. What did you think about that?
That was Mitch's only incorrect pick of the week, so I thought it was pretty amazing. Our boy Kenny Hill looked to beat Arkansas in overtime for the second time in his career, the first being in 2014 with the Aggies. But, Arkansas just has... You don't want to go to overtime with Arkansas.
No.
Ever. The Aggies have done it the past couple of years, and it's been scary. But when Arkansas gets you to overtime and you stoop down to play at Arkansas's level, they can beat you and embarrass you, even in front of your home fans like they did last week in Fort Worth.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Arkansas seems to lose a lot of games that they should win, but when they play big-time opponents like A&M or TCU, they seem to kind of rise to the challenge a little bit. Even though the game may be kind of messy, Arkansas always finds a way to kind of be in it at the end.
I saw a stat today that since 2014, the only teams in the SEC to not lose by more than 14 points are Alabama and Arkansas,
Wow.
who some people would consider a subpar football program at the present.
For most of the time, they look kind of subpar, but against TCU, I guess they got the job done.
We'll get to see them next week.
Yeah, we do. That's going to be an interesting game in Fort Worth.
We'll see.
Moving on, Tennessee and Virginia Tech in a game that broke the record for attendance at a college football game. The game was held at the Bristol Motor Speedway in Connecticut. Tennessee pulled out the win 45-24. Other than the lopsided victory for the Vols, the only other thing to talk about is really the bad seating at Bristol.
Yeah.
Some of those views were absolutely atrocious.
I actually had a cousin who was at the game last week, and good thing she's not a diehard football fan, or else she'd have been severely disappointed. It was, I don't know why you would want to go sit half a mile away from the field.
No, just watch it on TV. If you don't know what we're talking about, go Google some of the pictures taken from that game. Josh Dobbs and Jalen Hurts took care of business. Virginia Tech was just mistake prone and turned the ball over. They looked really bad against an SEC team.
Tennessee's trying to come back and look like Tennessee, the preseason top 10 team that they think they are.
Yeah. Texas A&M took care of Prairie View A&M 67-0. Not really much surprise there. It was nice to see the defense throw a shutout. But other than that, the halftime show was the really only entertaining part of that game.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of fun watching Prairie View, and it was a lot of fun to watch the Aggies put up a bunch of points on a team that they should have put up a bunch of points. Yeah. But it was very good to see the defense, who we're hanging our hat on so far in this early season, come out and do what they were supposed to do and not allow anybody in the end zone or even to split the uprights.
Yeah, absolutely. LSU got into the win column against Jacksonville State 34-13. The interesting thing to note about that is Les Miles has now reopened the quarterback competition at LSU. We'll see if Brandon Harris can get the starting job for week 3 or if he loses it to their backup. We just have to wait and see.
It looks like there's going to be some drama in Tigerland as, Brandon Harris on Twitter this week kind of responded to some former teammates' advice on transferring. Made his Twitter private, been followed by people like Tom Herman and Jim Harbaugh. We'll see where that goes, but definitely not a good look for the the Tigers from LSU this week.
Mississippi took care of Wofford 38-13. Nothing really to say about that. Florida absolutely embarrassed Kentucky on CBS 45-7. I tuned into this game for a little bit, and then once Florida started pulling away, there was just nothing redeeming about the Wildcats' performance.
Didn't really care.
No. It was hard to watch. Vandy took care of Middle Tennessee State 47-24. I think the lack of experience for Middle Tennessee State, like we talked about, was kind of the difference there. It's just a bigger team and an SEC opponent in Vanderbilt playing a small little brother team.
Yeah. Conference USA's, I don't really think they're going to fare well against the SEC this year.
Yeah.
There's another Conference USA SEC matchup this week, Florida, North Texas, and unfortunately I don't think my Mean Green are going to do very well.
The only game that we differed on last week was Mississippi State and South Carolina. I was right. Mississippi State won 27-14. What can you say? Will Muschamp and the Gamecocks looked like Will Muschamp and the Gamecocks for the rest of that game.
They're not very good this year. They got a win in week 1 over Vanderbilt, but I was hoping that Mississippi State was going to stoop to their level and play down to them and find a way to lose the game.
It just didn't quite happen.
Unfortunately, the Bulldogs made Stingray happy.
Yeah, who followed me on Twitter. Yeah, my buddy Stingray apparently followed me on Twitter. The final game in the SEC was, or not the final game, I'm sorry, Auburn and Arkansas State. Auburn took care of Arkansas State 51-14. The Aggies take on Auburn this week. That should be an interesting matchup.
Auburn took care of a very big football powerhouse, Arkansas State,
No surprises.
I don't know. Teams that have lost Arkansas State from big schools can't really bring any to mind. I've kind of pushed that game out of my mind. The Aggies lost to them a few years ago, but Auburn did what they're supposed to do, and they're trying to build a little momentum coming into this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the final game in the SEC. Missouri took on Eastern Michigan, and Drew Lock, their quarterback, Michigan's quarterback, took care of business, throwing for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns in a 61-21 blowout of the Eastern Michigan. Are they Falcons, Eagles? Eagles. Just another SEC team showing why they're an SEC team.
The SEC takes care of business. That's all you got to say there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now diving into the top 10 recap, the games that we haven't already talked about. Number 10, Wisconsin took on unranked Akron. I don't know that Akron will ever be ranked. They took care of business 54-10. Not much to say about that. There is an interesting amount to say about number 9, Georgia, barely beating Nicholls State 26-24. That was kind of an ugly game.
It happens. Yeah. Sometimes teams stoop to lower levels. I think that's a reoccurring theme here. We saw it week 1 when Tennessee barely squeaked by Appalachian State. This time it was Georgia's turn, and they dropped out of the top 10. They dropped back to, I believe, number 16.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing to note really in that game was Jacob Eason, true freshman, one of their top recruits coming into this year, got his first career win. We'll have to watch his career at Georgia to see where he goes.
He should be pretty good.
Highly touted recruit for sure.
Once he gets it figured out, they'll be pretty good.
Number 8, Washington vandalized the Vandals of Idaho 59-14.
I like that. That was good there, Mitch. Wow.
An absolute blowout. Number 7, Stanford had a bye, so they didn't do anything, and that was probably the best thing they could have done last week. Number 6, Houston, who actually played last night and beat Cincinnati. Last Saturday, they beat Lamar 42-0. I mean, not much.
Cards couldn't get it done. #Peckham.
Oh well. Number 5, Michigan beat Central Florida 51-14. Number 4, Ohio State. I don't know why I wrote OSU and just got confused. Yeah. Number 4, Ohio State beats Tulsa 48-3.
The other OSU game was more fun to watch.
Right. That's what I got confused on. Number 3, Florida State beats Charleston Southern 52-8. Number 2, Clemson barely squeaks by Troy 30-24. That was actually a very close game.
Yeah. Clemson's been in 2 very close games. They need to figure it out.
Yeah,
I'll look for them to win big this week against South Carolina State.
It's been kind of weird watching Clemson, how they have Deshaun Watson and all of these talented options on offense, and yet last week against Troy, their offense for the majority of the game looked really anemic.
Yeah, they've had some trouble scoring points all year already. We're only 2 weeks in all year.
And then we talked about the top team in the country, Alabama, taking care of Western Kentucky. So that takes care of the wrap-up for this week. Richard's going to dive into this week's matchups, week 3.
You want to go ahead and preview the Aggies?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, the Aggies, number 17 in the AP poll. They are 2-0. Will travel to the Plains, Auburn, Alabama, to face the Auburn Tigers at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Auburn comes into the game 1-1, having lost to Clemson week 1. The Aggies are the underdog, even though they are ranked and Auburn is unranked. Auburn is a 3.5-point favorite. Quarterback is Sean White. He's thrown for 384 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception so far. Nothing too big to note. Obviously, he got some break in the second half of their last game. It's a blowout. Kerryon Johnson has 41 carries for 218 yards, 5.3 yards per average, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, everybody got a break. Their stats are really nice and distributed so far. Big thing to note is Auburn has 5 receivers coming into this game that have caught a pass for over 20 yards.
Wow.
So one of the big matchups this week will be how the Aggies defensive backs can hang with the receivers. And if Auburn can get the Aggies to tackle with the corners and the safeties, then that's exactly what they want to do. And they'll have a very good chance to win. Obviously, another matchup to watch is the Aggie offensive line against a bigger, faster, stronger
talented
defensive line that they haven't seen so far through the games against UCLA and against Prairie View. The offensive lines look good so far. But then again, how good do we know? We haven't seen anybody that's too great. It's
We've
gonna
only
be a good test.
We've only given up 2 sacks through 95 dropbacks from Trevor Knight, Jake Hubenek, and then Connor McQueen. One dropback last week.
He's my guy.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the matchup to watch. Kevin Sumlin noted this week when being interviewed that Auburn's defensive line is probably the matchup to watch that will determine whether or not the Aggies can go into Jordan-Hare and pull this one out. Because they are so experienced, they are so talented, and they are bigger, faster, and stronger probably than our offensive line.
Anything we've seen so far.
Absolutely.
But, I really liked this week. I saw a bunch of respect between both sides, From the Auburn side, their defensive backs, I can't remember which one, but said that he thinks A&M has perhaps the best receiving core in the country. And I thought that was a great gesture. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think it's definitely deserving of the 6 o'clock Eastern or Central time slot on ESPN. But
no, I think in addition to the defensive line, if the Aggies can run the ball on Auburn, if we can get that initial push at the line of scrimmage, A&M is second in the SEC right now in yards per carry at 6.7 yards, just behind Mississippi State. If we can get Keith Ford, James White, Travion Williams through the line and balance out our passing attack, I think the Aggies stand a very, very good shot at going 3-0.
I think that takes a lot of pressure off Trevor Knight, and it'll open up some deep balls for that great Aggie receiving core.
Yeah, there you go.
So it should be a fun game to watch. So far in this series, since the Aggies have joined the SEC, it's split 2-2, and the home team has won none of them.
Yeah.
So Aggies are on the road, looking to make it 3
Should
straight
be
on
our
the
year.
road at Auburn.
Should be our year.
Yes. All right, we'll go ahead and preview the SEC games of the week. First off, we've got number 15, Tennessee. They are back home at Neyland Stadium. They will host the Ohio Bobcats at 11 a.m. Central on the SEC Network. Tennessee is a 27.5 favorite. I look for Josh Dobbs and Jalen Hurd to continue the momentum they got last week against Virginia Tech. I don't think they're going to quite cover the spread, but I think it'll be a 3-touchdown game over the Bobcats. I think the MAC is, like we said, Conference USA and all those other mid-majors not going to hang around with the SEC this week.
Yeah, nothing really to add there. Just as long as Dobbs and Hurd take care of business, Tennessee should win this game.
Next, we've got Vanderbilt. They go on the road at Georgia Tech, 11:30 on the ACC Network. You can catch that on Watch ESPN. Georgia Tech is a 6.5-point favorite, and I think the Yellow Jackets are going to get it done against a Vanderbilt team that won last week, but a Vanderbilt team that is definitely still rebuilding.
Yeah, no, Vandy doesn't have a high-powered offense to say the least, and I think even though Derek Mason prides himself on defense, I think Georgia Tech's triple option is just is just a thorn in so many teams' sides.
Let me tell you what, that is the worst. I hate playing against the triple option in NCAA. I think Vanderbilt's going to hate it in real life tomorrow.
No, I think Georgia Tech pulls this one out too.
Number 1, Alabama at number 19, Ole Miss. Ole Miss looks to make it 3 in a row against the Crimson Tide.
Mm-hmm.
The saying used to be that Nick Saban doesn't lose 2 games to the same team in a row. Hugh Freeze looks to make it 3. That'll be in Oxford, 2:30 on CBS. Alabama's a 10.5-point favorite, and I think Nick Saban makes it hurt. I think Nick Saban looks for revenge on what can honestly be described as a miracle last year at Denny Bryant Stadium. They had a couple crazy plays, and the one ball that was tipped up and then caught by a different receiver for a touchdown. And I think Chad Kelly and the Ole Miss Rebels have their work cut out for them. They're bringing back the powder blue lids this week.
They are. Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think?
I'm actually going to go with the Rebels here, and I don't know what it is about them. We've talked about Chad Kelly and the dynamic playmaking ability that he brings to the offense. For whatever reason, I think Hugh Freeze has some part of Nick Saban's number where even though they won on a miracle last year, Hugh Freeze was able to keep that game close. I think in Oxford, I think the Rebels are very, very loud. I think Alabama at least gets tested. I think this is maybe a field goal game, but I'm going to go ahead and pick the Rebels, just see what happens, see if they can make it 3 in a row.
I mean, last time the Crimson Tide came to Oxford, the goalposts were ripped out of the ground.
Yeah, they were.
So it'll be interesting.
We'll see.
Kentucky at home versus New Mexico State, 3 o'clock on the SEC Network. Kentucky is a 3-touchdown favorite, and I think I'll go with the Wildcats in this game.
Yeah, it's
anything more to add?
No, it's just funny seeing how the lines can differentiate between weeks. They lost by 4 scores to Florida last week, and now they're a 3-touchdown favorite against New Mexico State. So.
Some disrespect for the New Mexico State Aggies, I'll tell you what. All right, in a game that should be really close, the South Carolina Gamecocks play host to in-state rival East Carolina is from North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Get it right, please. East Carolina looks to stake their claim as the correct Carolina. 3 o'clock on the SEC Network. USC is only a 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to go ahead and take the Pirates.
Yeah.
I think they say that they give the home team 3 points to begin with.
Right.
So that means it's an even line almost. I think East Carolina's going to come out and, I wouldn't say shock the world, but at least upset Will Muschamp and the Gamecocks this week.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with Eastern Carolina too. South Carolina doesn't have a quarterback either. Perry Orth looked awful in the first half against Mississippi State last week. Brendan McElwain is probably going to get the starting job this week. They asked Will Muschamp in interviews this week, do you have a starting quarterback? He said he had a pretty good idea, which with as bad as Orth played last week, that tends to indicate that McElwain will be getting the start. With all that drama in South Carolina, with a brand new head coach coming off of a loss against Mississippi State, I'm going to go with the high-powered offense of the Pirates.
Ooh, we agree on that one. I think that's good. Mississippi State, the Bulldogs will travel to Baton Rouge, Death Valley, and face number 20 LSU. 6 o'clock on ESPN2. LSU's a 14-point favorite, and I look for LSU to come out wearing those gold uniforms this week. Did you see those?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think those look pretty good. I think Leonard Fournette is going to make everybody forget about the quarterback controversy there, and I think he's just going to run wild on a Mississippi State team that, to be very honest, is not very good.
Yeah, I think Mississippi State might keep this one close initially, but then, like you said, I think Leonard Fournette is going to run all over him. The only other interesting thing to note, again, is the quarterback controversy there. Brandon Harris looks pretty bad through the first 2 weeks. Danny Etling is the backup's name. He was 6 for 14 last week with 100 yards, a touchdown, and a pick.
I don't expect Harris to start.
I think Les Miles is going to give Etling the start. Just watching how all that plays out will be interesting, but I think LSU does win it.
Yeah, I think so too. Number 24, Arkansas, in a tune-up game before next week's matchup with the Aggies. They are at home against the Texas State Bobcats. 6:30 on the SEC Network. Arkansas, a 31-point favorite. My opinion on Arkansas is they always seem to play down or play up to somebody's level. I don't think they're going to cover the spread. I don't think they're going to get close. I do think they win this game. but I don't think it's a blowout like the line would predict. I think the Bobcats aren't very good, obviously. Sun Belt teams don't really compete with the SEC very often.
Right.
The exception of the rule would be South Alabama 2 weeks ago.
Alabama, yeah.
But Pigs win, but it's ugly.
Yeah, the only question for me in this game is how long before the game do Texas State players stop drinking and partying to get ready for this game? Arkansas rolls, no problem for the Razorbacks.
Number 23, Florida, home against North Texas. Go Mean Green. 6:30 Central on ESPNU. Florida is the 36.5-point favorite, and it could be 36.5. I'm not going to say it is. I think Florida wins big. Texas
is going to be ugly.
North Texas is ranked 128 out of 128.
Yeah.
So
no, the last time these two teams played, Florida put up over 60 points on the Mean Green. It's not going to be close.
It's not going to be pretty. An SEC conference battle. Number 16, Georgia will travel to Columbia, Missouri, take on the Tigers. 6:30 on the SEC network. UGA, 6.5-point favorite. What do you think?
Give me the Bulldogs. It's a quarterback battle between two young kids, Drew Lock and Jacob Eason, but I think the experience for the rest of the Georgia team, Nick Chubb gets the job done on the road this week in Columbia.
Yeah, I think the line's a bit misleading. I think Georgia's going to probably win by 10 points or 2 touchdowns. I think Nick Chubb's going to right the ship from a very ugly week 2.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and get into the top 10 like we've done all year long so far. We're not going to preview that one SEC matchup that is Alabama-Ole Miss since we've already done that. We'll start with number 10. Actually, we won't start with number 10 because number 10, Louisville, is at home this week against Florida State. We'll pick that game and recap that in just a little bit. Number 9, Wisconsin, home against Georgia State. 11 a.m. on the Big Ten Network, rightfully so. Nobody's going to get up for that one.
No.
Wisconsin's a 31-point favorite, and Wisconsin's going to win big.
Yeah, no, if Wisconsin can beat LSU as impressively as they did with their defense, no problem with Georgia State.
I don't think we need to talk about it.
No.
Washington, another game that we don't really need to talk about. 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time on the Pac-12 Network against Portland State, Division II team. Washington's looking to win the Pacific Northwest outright here. There's no line posted. The Huskies are going to roll. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, no, the only thing I know about Portland State is their basketball team made March Madness a couple years ago. That's about it.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. Stanford's going to come off their bye week this week, ranked number 7, didn't move. They are at home this week against USC. 7 o'clock on ABC. That's a very good primetime game. Stanford is ranked, or has a 8.5-point favorite. What do you think?
I mean, as much as I would love to see this rivalry kind of swing back towards USC, I really hate one-sided rivalries when I don't have a dog in the fight because I like to watch good college football games, but I don't see any way USC possibly wins this game. I think Stanford is far too strong. Christian McCaffrey runs all day over them.
Yes. There was something that came out this week about how some booster gave a Stanford player a lot of money and whatnot. Apparently some improper benefit stuff going on. Not sure if that's a big story yet. Stanford's going to win big regardless. It's Christian McCaffrey. He's a stud.
Yeah.
And he's going to continue his Heisman campaign.
Absolutely.
From one Heisman candidate to the other, we'll go ahead and talk about Houston's game last night against Cincinnati. Greg Ward Jr., the Heisman candidate we just mentioned, he was hurt and didn't look very good.
Right.
And Houston didn't look very good.
No, they didn't. It was really odd watching that game last night. Finished some homework, turned it on, and to see it 7-7 through the majority of the first half with Cincinnati's defense really rising up and playing well. Now, I think their defense looked a little bit better because Greg Ward Jr. didn't have the full extent of their playbook available to him being hurt. But at the same time, Houston didn't take care of business until late in that game. The final was 40-16, but
very misleading.
That is extremely misleading. 2 pick sixes on back-to-back plays for the Cougars pulled away late in that game, but it was a very entertaining game.
The Bearcats came into the fourth quarter leading, actually.
Yeah, they did.
And then Houston took that away pretty quickly, and then didn't look back as Cincinnati basically gifted the game and killed Tommy Tuberville's spirits. Number 5, Clemson. Like we said, they've had some mishaps. They've gotten off to a shaky start for the past couple weeks. They are home against South Carolina State, another game that doesn't have a line posted. 11 a.m. on the ACC network. You can catch that on Watch ESPN. And Clemson's going to roll. I think Deshaun Watson's going to finally look like the Heisman contender that he is.
You can catch it on Watch ESPN, but why would you?
Because you've got nothing better to do waiting for the Aggies at 6 o'clock. That's why.
Moving on.
Number 4, Michigan at home against Colorado. Michigan does not release a depth chart before the game for the opposing SIDs and the opposing coaches. So Colorado decided they weren't going to do one either, and their SID had some fun with it.
That was entertaining,
I think
for sure.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was playing center for them.
They just kind of created a depth chart with sports heroes, fictional characters. If you haven't seen that, go look that up. That was entertaining. This is actually, I think, a close game. Although Colorado is Colorado, they're 2-0. Their first 2 weeks, they've actually looked decent. Their defense has been able to get some stops. Their offense has scored the ball. But ultimately, they're at number 4, Michigan, in the Big House. So I think it's actually a closer game than maybe some would predict, but Michigan wins this one.
Michigan's a 19.5-point favorite. I think Michigan's going to win by 3 touchdowns. Remember, they're still getting revenge for, I believe it was 1994, the miracle at the Big House.
Oh, yeah.
For Colorado. There's been many miracles at the Big House that have not been good to Michigan, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to continue to leave no doubt. I think the Wolverines win big.
Yeah.
Moving on to their arch rival, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and what is one of the best games of the week. We didn't touch this earlier, but the top 3 teams in the country are on the road this week, playing true road games for the first time in history.
Yeah.
And Ohio State is away in Norman, Oklahoma. They'll play the number 14 Oklahoma Sooners. 6:30 on Fox. Ohio State's a 1.5-point favorite. It should be a close game. I think the Buckeyes are going to take care of business. I continue to say I don't think Oklahoma's very good. I think Bob Stoops got an overrated team this year. I think people are going to continue to figuring out Baker Mayfield, and I think Ohio State's probably going to win by about 10 points.
Yeah, I was tempted to take Oklahoma at home this week. I think there's a little bit more redeeming quality in the team than maybe you do, but after watching how they just got dismantled by Houston in week 1, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think Ohio State is going to come in, take care of business, and until Oklahoma can beat a quality opponent this year, I don't think I can pick the Sooners anymore.
Yeah, I don't think the Sooners are going to be anywhere near. I don't think it's going to be a good game.
Sorry, Baker. I tried.
All right, so number 2, Florida State at number 10, Louisville, in what many consider one of the best games of the week, other than that Ohio State-OU matchup. 11 a.m.
Yeah, why?
Unfortunately,
why is it
on
11?
ABC. I don't think that when they made the TV schedule, they expected Lamar Jackson to be doing Lamar Jackson things.
Yeah.
11 a.m. Florida State's a 1.5-point favorite on the road. Lamar Jackson's been a stud through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He's been absolutely amazing and absolutely starting his Heisman campaign. Lamar Jackson needs to beat either Florida State or Clemson to actually have a real, true Heisman campaign, and he's got a great chance at home in Louisville, wearing those chrome red lids that you've seen online.
They look pretty sweet.
The Cardinals will be honoring the late Muhammad Ali this week, and I think Lamar Jackson, I think the Heisman campaign can officially start after this week. I think Louisville's going to find a way to beat the Seminoles.
Man, I really thought we were going to disagree on this one, but I'm going to pick Louisville as well. I was very tempted to take Florida State, but I see similarities between the explosiveness of Ole Miss's offense and then add the extra playmaking ability that Lamar Jackson has. I think Louisville's high-powered offense, as long as they don't collapse in the second half defensively like Ole Miss did, I think Louisville exposes Florida State this week. I don't think Florida State's all that good. I think they've been overrated for a very long time. I think the Cardinals get it done this week.
I think, and that's going to throw a big monkey wrench into the whole Heisman campaign. You know, you've got Deshaun Watson, Christian McCaffrey. Who else do you want to put up in there? You could put Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
But I think Lamar Jackson's gonna, assert his dominance this weekend. He's gonna. Greg Ward can be put in there as well, but I think Lamar Jackson's gonna assert himself as the front runner this week.
Yeah, Louisville's gonna be hyped for sure. It's the first time College Game Day's ever visited Louisville, so they're gonna be ready and excited for that game.
I think it'll be a good time. We've got time to pick our game, I guess.
Yes.
Number 17, Texas A&M on the road in Auburn, Alabama. The Auburn Tigers are 1-1. Auburn is a favorite, as I mentioned earlier, 3.5 points. Mm-hmm. You can catch that game on 6 o'clock Central Time, ESPN. You can catch me yelling at my TV at that time. The Aggies' first road game of the year. Open up SEC play with a very good Auburn team that is 1-1. They took Clemson, who at the time was the number 2 team in the country. They took them to the wire and actually had a chance to win it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this game?
I think the Aggies come in, even though the line is in Auburn's favor, I think the Aggies come in with the advantage here. My key to the game that I'm really watching for is, can Trevor Knight start a little bit faster than he has in the first 2 weeks? Auburn doesn't have an electrifying offense. They haven't really put up many points in the first 2 weeks, but their defense is very solid. And if Trevor Knight can get started a little bit earlier, have some crisper passes early in the game, and then be able to set the tempo, I think the Aggies will be able to put up points on them. It's just we've got to be crisp on offense.
It's all about the offensive line for the Aggies against the defensive line of Auburn. That said, you want to go ahead and make your pick?
I think the Aggies win in a close game. I'm gonna give them a field goal.
Here, Drew, you got the camera coming through for you?
I've got the camera coming through for us.
Unfortunately, I cannot be as red ass as Mitch, and for the first time ever on this show, on the It's About Us podcast, I'm going to be a 2%er and pick against the Aggies. I think Auburn's going to find a way to win it, and I think that streak of 4 straight road teams to win the game is unfortunately going to come to an end.
Yeah.
It hurts my heart to pick against the Aggies, but I don't feel very confident about it this week.
Yeah, no, I'm with you too. I think there's plenty of room for things to go wrong here for A&M. It's going to come down to just flat execution, like you said, the offense versus the defensive line. Who wins that battle? Can our secondary come up and make tackles? Can they restrict this Auburn core of wide receivers? So many ways that the Aggies could lose this game, and I think that's what's making you nervous. It's making me nervous too. I just might have a little bit more faith this week.
We'll no doubt be rooting for the Aggies tomorrow. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I can put more losses in the loss column than Mitch this week. But it's a tough one. It should be a good game, though. That's what I'm looking forward to.
It should be a good game.
Won't turn it off in the third quarter like I did last week.
Yeah.
It was a scorcher last week.
It was a scorcher.
Anyways, we've got an exciting week for you here, week 3. I'm just excited. I love having the weekends dominated by football.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Pretty great.
I guess from Mitch Mason, myself, Richard Zane, we'll see you next week when we talk about the Aggies and the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah.
So until then, everybody enjoy a great week of games and gig 'em.
Thanks and gig 'em.